Right. We are live. I will thank you everyone for joining us. I will kick things over to start us off to Cassandra.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's press conference launching For My Kids for Our Schools. My name is Cassandra Albridge, and I am proud to be part of this coalition of parents, educators, citizens, and organizations that all support public education. We want quality public schools for all children, schools that support each child's unique and critical needs with access to high quality and high qualified educators that work with parents and communities to provide access and support for both kids and adults alike. Unfortunately, Betsy DeVos and her allies have spent decades trying to dismantle the promise of public education and replace it with a system of for-profit and privatized schools that get to pick and choose the students they want and are not accountable to anyone. And now comes the latest attempt to defund neighborhood schools in favor of a voucher scheme that will take hundreds of millions of dollars out of the school aid fund and ultimately could cost the state $1 billion in revenue, impacting the needs of 90% of Michigan students who attend public schools while helping wealthy individuals and corporations avoid paying their fair share of taxes. And this isn't new. Voucher schemes like this one have been routinely rejected by Michigan voters because they know that these schemes are unconstitutional and take critical resources away from public schools. What is new is the political calculation. DeVos is counting on the legislature bypassing traditional legislative checks and balances and denying the voters the right to even weigh in on these proposals. And that is why we are here today. We are asking voters to decline to sign these petitions. Signature collectors may tell you that this will just put the initiative on the ballot, but that is not true. This is not the intent. With about 340,000 signatures, which is just 8% of voter turnout, DeVos and her friends can make their own laws. And voters will not have the opportunity to vote on either of these initiatives. And of course, since there are appropriations attached, these will be referendum proof, permanently taking away citizens' right to vote on this voucher scheme. So today, we're going to hear from parents and educators about why it is so important to decline to sign these petitions. Our first speaker is Arlisa Hurd. Arlisa is a Detroit Public Schools special education parent and education organizer with 482 Forward in Detroit. Arlisa, please share your story.
Thank you, Dr. Albrecht. Hello again, everyone. I'd just like to say that as a parent, I believe that this ballot initiative is one of the most dangerous threats to Michigan public schools today. And I want to just help you understand why. My son is currently a high school student within Detroit Public Schools. He's bright, intelligent, funny, creative beyond imagination, respectful, and an all-around great athlete. He plays football. However, he also needs the extra help he receives from special education services because he has ADHD. And because of this diagnosis, learning, focusing, and remaining on task has been a major issue for him all of his academic life. I, too, was a parent who was frustrated with the system. And I was in search of the right fit for how my son learns, simply because, and we really seem to be getting nowhere. So we tried a private school, a prestigious private school in Indian Village, which is in an affluent neighborhood here in Detroit. Now, after 6 weeks of attending this school, under the guise of probationary enrollment, we were told that, quote, enrollment would not be extended to him because they did not have the resources to service him, although that's what they advertised on their websites and they prided themselves on. So in other words, they kicked us out because he wasn't a good fit for their school culture. And by the way, they actually gave us a list of public schools that we should consider going to for his schooling. This is exactly why taking away hundreds of millions of dollars from Michigan's public school system is not the answer to better education. Private schools just simply don't have to accept a student who comes knocking at their door. However, public schools do. They can't pick and choose who to educate. This ballot initiative would take hundreds of millions of dollars away from already under-resourced public schools and put it in the hands of private schools under the notion of the grass is greener on the other side. Private schools does not mean education paradise. I know that parents like me may be frustrated with the state of our public schools, but let me be clear. The answer to our dreams for our kids' education does not lie within private schools, let alone giving billionaires and millionaires huge tax breaks. The answer to our kids' dream is to invest in our public schools, invest in our communities, and to listen to the needs of parents and students to make sure we get it right. Allowing rich people like the DeVos family dictate the funding of our schools has not served any of our schools well. I'd like to call on every legislator who cares about children and who cares about schools to not force this piece of legislation on the people within your districts. No matter your political affiliation, invest in our current system we have. Let our public schools thrive and let them continue to serve kids like mine. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arlisa. Our next speaker is Twanda Bailey. Twanda has retired from teaching in Detroit public school system in 2021 after 30 years of educating kids from kindergarten to 7th grade. Twanda, can you please share your experience with us?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Twanda Bailey. I am a retired teacher from Detroit Public School, 30 years and 6 months. But yeah, I've seen a drastic change from the time I first started teaching up until last year when I retired. Students were more bubbly. They were excited about coming to school because we had activities, we had programs in place for them to enjoy, and they just enjoy coming to school. As the years went by, these programs were taken away from us. We no longer had any more funding for them. They couldn't participate in these things. And a lot of time parents had to go and pay private money for private activities for the kids to do. And that's just not fair. Our kids struggles a great deal now. And I mean a great deal mentally. They're dealing with things at home, whereas before we would have things in place in school where parents didn't have to pay outside sources. We provided those services at school to help their child with whatever problem they had. These things are no longer available anymore. We don't have that anymore. So we find these kids with their mental struggles to be growing. It's getting worse and it's getting worse. It's not getting any better because these programs and these support teams, and they're not in place anymore. They're taken away. And not only that, teachers are struggling as well. We're paying out of our pockets for lots of things. And like I said, I can compare from the beginning to now. Before we had plentiful material, supplies that we needed for our classroom, even for our students. As the years have gone by, no, teachers are paying this out of their pockets, and as well as trying to maintain their own personal household. So it's a huge struggle on things that are taken away from us, and it's just not fair. It's not giving our students a fair playing field to compete against other students, whether they're private or whatever the case may be. Public school kids do not have that fair chance because things are taken away from them, and it's just not fair. And this is not a fair proposal, legislature to have. It's not right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Cassandra.
And this proposal will certainly exacerbate some of the problems that you just mentioned. And instead, what we'd love to see are those resources put back into the school so that those programs can exist again and reinvigorate that spirit that you talked about. We're going to hear now from a superintendent. Superintendent Andrew Brody is from Flat Rock Community Schools and the board president for the Michigan Association of Superintendents and Administrators. Andrew.
Thanks, Dr. Albrecht, and Twanda and Arlisa, thank you so much for your messages and your stories. I think that's so vital to hear both a teacher's perspective and obviously a parent's perspective. So thank you so much for doing that. I am Andrew Brody. I am the superintendent of Flat Rock Community Schools, and I also right now have the honor of serving as the board president of the MASA. I'm a proud Michigan educator for 23 years in the classroom as an AD, as a principal, and now as a lead administrator for the previous 7. But more importantly than all those things, I'm a father of public school children. What we're talking about today is a wolf in sheep's clothing, a situation where deceptive tactics are being used to get people to sign on to petitions that they really know nothing about. They aren't scholarships for kids, they're vouchers. The Let My Kids Learn campaign is a voucher scheme that would provide tax credits for private school tuition. And more importantly, it would drain hundreds of millions of dollars from the state revenues in its first year alone. This will take critical funding directly from our students' classrooms and the public schools that serve them across this state. Not to mention that our state constitution bans funding resources to private schools. Public money should be used to support public schools, period. Like so many of you, I've seen this play out before. I've always equated school voucher campaigns like this one to an iceberg. What you see on the surface may not look too scary to you at first glance, but once you take a look below the surface and learn the truth, you will see the destructive impact that's going to come our way. We've looked below the surface and this threat is real. We don't need a voucher system that's going to further divide the haves and the have-nots in this state and funnel money for-profit schools at the expense of our students. This isn't going to make education in Michigan any better. We need to equitably build a system that funds all of our schools for all of our kids, no matter their zip code. So that we can ensure that we have teachers in the classroom and other important resources that our students need and deserve. Please take a moment to learn more about what this actually means at mykids.com. And please talk to your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, whomever else might listen, and ask them not to sign this petition, because the public isn't even going to get a chance to vote on it for themselves. If they get enough Michiganders to sign on the line, it's going to be rammed through our legislature. This is not the solution to funding our schools, fixing our educator shortage, or ensuring our children have high quality education. It's exactly the opposite. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And for those that are listening, that website is formykids.com. That's formykids.com. Our next speaker, Rick Catherman, lives in South Haven and is a recently retired music education teacher who taught in several districts in Michigan and has 30 years of experience in the classroom. Rick, you are on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Dr. Albrecht. Appreciate that, and good afternoon to everyone. As she mentioned, my name is Rick Catherman. I'm a recently retired teacher, having served 30 plus years in the music classroom. When I was in the classroom, I thought my job was difficult, but I can't even imagine how these educators do it today. That's because teachers, students, and parents today are carrying an ever increasingly heavy load. In the past couple of years alone, they've had to deal with a worsening educator shortage, COVID, remote learning, an increase in student mental health needs, endless standardized testing, school violence, and more. I hear it all the time from former colleagues, friends, and family members that are still in the classroom. Those people are reaching a breaking point. My daughter actually is currently in the classroom completing her student intern teaching. She comes home every day sharing stories from the educators she is working with about the challenges that they face on a regular basis. Constant changes, making adjustments to lesson plans on a weekly, daily, or even hourly basis, all the while working to support all students, those in their classroom and those in the greater school community. So many good educators just can't do it anymore. And unfortunately, fewer college students are entering the field. My daughter made the commitment years prior to the pandemic to dedicate her life to teaching, but teacher preparation programs like hers are seeing a decline in the number of those pursuing education as a profession. Frankly, who can blame them? If it were like this when I started teaching 30 years ago, I'm not sure how long I would have lasted either. It would be difficult for anyone. This has all led to a school staff shortage that is getting worse by the day. And it's putting the future of our children and our grandchildren at risk. We need our state leaders to get together and solve this educator shortage before it's too late and causes more long-term damage to the next generation. That means investing in our schools. It means increasing compensation for veteran and new educators. It means investing in mental health support for students. The last thing we should be doing is cutting hundreds of millions of dollars from our schools every year and giving it to private for-profit schools, which is what this dangerous voucher proposal does. Instead of taking more money out of our kids' schools, we need to hire more teachers, qualified, certified teachers that are being developed in our state college and university teacher prep programs. We need to assure that we have school counselors and mental health specialists to support students' social and emotional learning, more bus drivers and other support staff, people that are committed to building a strong community through service to their local schools and student populations. We need to invest in school safety, modern technology, skills training. We need to invest in the people and the things that will make our public schools stronger, not weaker. This is exactly what parents want. This is exactly what educators want. And this is exactly what students want. I remember the last time Betsy DeVos tried to pass a school voucher proposal for the benefit of her wealthy friends in the private school business. Michigan voters soundly defeated her proposals because we value our neighborhood public schools. We know that funneling money to private schools does nothing to provide equal opportunity for Michigan children. Michigan voters said no to school vouchers before, and if given the opportunity, we will say no again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our final speaker today is Owen Goulding. Owen lives in Sheboygan and is the parent of an elementary school student at Sheboygan area schools. Owen, please share your story.
Thank you, Dr. Albrecht. Yes, again, my name's Owen Goulding and I live in Sheboygan, which is near the Mackinac Bridge. And I'm the proud father of a 7-year-old who is in 1st grade. She attends East Elementary, and she's actually the 3rd generation in our family that's connected to that particular school as either a student or a teacher. And after a year of virtual kindergarten, my daughter loves going to school every day, but I also hear a lot from her about the challenges in the classroom as kids deal with the stress of the pandemic. And her school has sometimes had to close this year because of staff shortages. Our school district has many challenges due to high poverty rates and our isolated location. But I'm lifting up my voice today because I really believe that regardless of the size or location of your school district, no matter where you live, all families want their children to have the opportunity to learn, to be nurtured, and gain the skills they need to thrive. In Northern Michigan and other rural communities like Sheboygan, the local public school is often the hub of activity for families in the places we live. They're the physical places where community happens. This DeVos voucher proposal threatens the well-being of our public schools, which means the heart of our communities are under threat. If you underfund schools, which this proposal aims to do, you undercut the growth and livability of small towns across Michigan. In Sheboygan, we don't have charter schools. Public schools are the community schools. And if you weaken those, you weaken the heart, the beating heart of our small towns. We need people across the state from Sheboygan to Detroit and everywhere in between to take action. First, do not sign the Let My Kids Learn petition. Second, talk to your friends, your family, and your neighbors, and make sure they understand the issue because there is a deceptive practice here, as the other speakers have mentioned. And lastly, we need folks to contact their state lawmakers and urge them to not support the ballot proposal should it arrive at their desks. Should this petition collect enough signatures, the least they can do is let the people of Michigan vote on it rather than ramming it through and going around the checks and balances of state government. Rather than supporting voucher schemes that take money away from public schools, our lawmakers in Lansing should be focusing on connecting rural communities with high-speed internet, which is still a huge problem here, boosting the pay and training of educators to help tackle staffing shortages, like at my daughter's school, and then addressing the brick and mortar needs of our school buildings so students across Michigan can learn in well-equipped and modern classrooms. Michiganders do not want or support this ballot initiative. We've stopped voucher efforts before and we'll do it again. What Michiganders do want are smaller class sizes, well-compensated educators and staff, and wraparound services for students directly in schools, especially as we're dealing with the pandemic. The Let My Kids Learn proposal actively works against these goals by stripping away critical funding away from public schools across Michigan, and we can't let that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. I too grew up in a rural district. I can relate to everything you just said about the school being the hub of the community. So thank you for sharing that. And I want to thank all of our speakers today. And I want to thank you, the journalists, for attending today's press conference as well. What you heard today is just the beginning. We have a large and growing network of parents, citizens, educators, organizations, and supporters who are committed to strengthening public education and access for all students, and who recognize that these ballot initiatives will take Michigan in the wrong direction. We are asking voters to decline to sign these petitions and stop this voucher scheme in its tracks. But let's send a message. Michigan's public schools are not for sale. And for more information, please visit our website at www.formykids, that's FORMIKIDS.com. With that, I am happy to entertain questions.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go down the list here of reporters who are raising their hand in the order that I see them pop up. And I think we're going to start with Andrew, who I believe is from MERS News. Andrew, you should have speaking permissions if you unmute yourself.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I heard a lot about, just opposing the campaign, the petition campaign, but I'm wondering, is there anything else you guys are going to be doing other than just telling people not to sign it? Like, is there some other move that you guys are going to make? I'm just above don't sign it.
So, all options are on the table at this point, but the reality is if the other side doesn't collect enough signatures, then this doesn't move forward. So if we can get folks to be educated on what these proposals actually do, and I think once they are educated on what they do, they will not want to sign them. So that is our push right now, is to make sure that the other side does not collect enough signatures to move this forward.
Okay, and I guess the follow-up to that would be, if it does go through, what's the, other than just calling this representatives, was there any other plan?
So again, many things could be on the table depending on the direction that we head. But if the other side does collect enough signatures, then it goes to the legislature. The legislature has 40 days in which they could actually enact these schemes. And like I said, there's appropriations tied to them, which means they're referendum proof at that point. So we will also be communicating with legislators about our desire to see if the signatures are in fact collected, that they at least allow the citizens to vote on the actual initiatives and not take that right away from citizens. We'll also be talking to their voters and their citizens about what is taking place. And I'm sure they will be encouraging their legislators as well. So, everything is on the table at this point, but it's one step at a time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Up next, the next hand I saw up was Beth LeBlanc with the Detroit News. You should be able to unmute yourself, Beth.
It's actually Craig Mauger. So
oh, it's Craig. Hey, Craig.
Hey, quick question. Multiple speakers mentioned deceptive practices that they allege that this campaign has been engaging in. You mentioned saying that it's going to be on the ballot, not mentioning that it's going to go through the legislature potentially. What other deceptive practices have you all identified them committing?
So I'm not going to get into specifics about what could or could not happen here, but I will say that in general, it is not unusual for paid circulators to not be 100% truthful with people when they are signing these petitions. And we're going to be watching that very closely. If we find out that there are signature collectors who are sharing misinformation, for example, this is going to somehow support public education or increase funding for public education, then we are going to come down hard on that. However, right now, our focus is making sure that people are just educated on what these initiatives actually do, so that we don't have to worry about them being deceived by circulators. They're going to know going into it what it is that they may or may not be signing.
All right. Up next, we've got Stella. Stella, you should be good to unmute yourself.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, and you are with Bridge, correct?
Yes,
Excellent.
I'm a state reporter with Bridge, Michigan. Hi. So I have two questions. First one, I want to follow up on Merce's question. So you said right now it's about educating voters. It's about, and you said you're going to be watching the petition, the petitioners really closely. So how exactly is that going to turn out? Like, is there lobbying efforts right now at the legislature? Are there ads? Are you tracking their petitioners? And how are you educating them? You know, panels, town halls? Can you just be more specific about that, please?
So I'm not going to get into a lot of specifics, but I will say that we have a strong coalition of folks that are supportive of public education. And if they hear of someone in their neighborhood who is collecting signatures, then it is not unusual for them to share that information. And so we are definitely paying attention. And we will be paying attention for the foreseeable future as they're collecting these signatures. As far as specifics, tactics, and strategies, I'm not going to share that at this point.
Thanks. Another question. So, obviously you talked about deception, and on the transparency front, I was wondering if the coalition, would reject dark money funding for your operations, considering that a lot of money from obscure nonprofits have poured into the ballot initiatives. Are you guys going to take money from nonprofits that shield their, don't have to disclose their donor information?
So I think the dark money problem is on the other side. We know that the DeVos's are experts at this. They know how to, turn money into advocacy. So if there's going to be an issue with dark money in this campaign, I don't think it's going to be on our side. It's going to be on their side. What we have set up is a legitimate ballot opposition committee. And we will be filing all of the necessary state reports that are required for us to file, and we will be transparent in that realm. So that is what we are doing. I would encourage you to look to the other side and ask them the same question.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, we've got Virginia Gordon with Michigan Radio. Virginia, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I am wondering if you could, for people who might think that the DeVos-backed proposal simply increases school choice for people, can you unpack the relationship between that ballot initiative and your statement that it will drain money from public schools? And then can you also describe how you get to varying figures that has been stated in the press conference about how much will be drained? And then I have one more question after that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So starting with school choice, Michigan has an abundance of school choice now. And those options include both public and private education. Private education being that if you want to send your child to a private school, you fund that. The taxpayers do not. So it's not that Michigan has a lack of school choice. We have traditional schools, we have charter schools, we have virtual schools. We have an abundance of choice. This isn't about choice. This is about privatizing education. This is about taking public dollars and turning them over to private institutions that are not accountable to taxpayers, do not have to report anything to anybody, and can use that money in any way they want. Not only that, we heard from a parent earlier who demonstrates that just because you have money to take to a private school doesn't mean that private school is going to accept your child. public schools accept every child. And that is what we are arguing for today, that every child in this state deserves access to a quality education, and that is a public education. Once you enter this realm of voucher schemes, you destroy that. And as far as your second question, I think was about getting to the funding numbers. That comes from the bills actually themselves, the language itself. So if you remember back to what the legislature passed, it was that this could be $500 million the first year, and then a 20% increase every year after that for the next 5 years. That means $1 billion within 5 years that would have gone into state coffers are now diverted into tax breaks and then sent into private schools. So we didn't make that up, that came from them. So I think that answers both of your questions, but please let me know if you have anything else.
No, it does very well, but I just, first, could I ask you for one of those bill numbers that I think you said the figures came out of the the fiscal agency's report?
Yeah, Virginia, I'll follow up with that information for you in a separate email.
Great. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding that this would also negatively affect public charter schools. Is that correct?
I would say so. I mean, if you're talking about taking hundreds of $millions out of the school aid fund, that's where charter schools get their funding as well.
And then my last sort of detailed question about this is, you've referenced earlier for-profit private schools, but what you're talking also about any private school, right? Because plenty of them are nonprofits.
Yes, that also includes religious-based schools as well.
And can you just expand on why, just relate why your concerns are the same about whether a private school is for-profit, religious, or nonprofit?
Absolutely, because none of them have to report anything to anybody. It doesn't matter if you're for-profit, nonprofit, or religious. At the end of the day, you don't take the same assessments. You are not required to report to the public how you spend your money. You're not required to report how the students are learning. None of this is required of any private school. So basically, we would be taking tax money from schools that are required to report that information and diverting it into schools that are not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then I think our last question, and then if there are any follow-up questions after this, again, please reach out to me at sam@progressmichigan.org, and I'll be happy to help you out. Up next, we've got Kobe Levin. Kobe, you should be good.
Okay. Kobe Levin here with Chalkbeat. First off, just glancing at the financials for this committee, it looks to me like you all have $400 in cash on hand. Would that be accurate if I reported it today?
I am guessing that you are taking that from the very first report that was filed. Yeah. So my understanding is the paperwork was filed right before that report was due. And so that's what you would see on the first report. I do not have an update for you on where we would stand today.
Would it be more?
I don't have an update for you.
Okay, got it. And then a couple of folks mentioned the idea that this initiative is unconstitutional. Would you anticipate a legal challenge going against it if the legislature were to approve the ballot initiative?
Again, I would say all options are on the table. And I would be surprised if entities such as ours thought this was unconstitutional and didn't challenge it based on those constitutional questions.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, great questions. Appreciate everyone hopping on. I think we're going to wrap it up there. Again, if there are any additional follow-up questions for any of our speakers or for the For My Kids coalition in general, please reach out to me at sam@progressmichigan.org. Appreciate all of our speakers joining us today, all the members of the media for tuning in and asking great questions. This is only the beginning, and we'll have a lot more updates as the campaign gets rolling. Appreciate everyone joining us. Have a great day and stay safe out there.
Thank you.